The marble courtyard of Grant Industries shimmered under the afternoon sun, polished so clean you could see your future in it, if your future came with stock options and a corner office. A fountain burbled softly in the center, its water dancing like money. Everything here whispered wealth, power, control. Everything, that is, except for the small boy sitting alone on the far bench. Oliver Grant, 10 years old, eyes too quiet for a child, sat motionless with his fingers folded in his lap. His chest rose and fell in perfect rhythm, but his face wore the stillness of someone who had learned early not to expect much from the world, because Oliver was deaf, not by birth, not entirely. At 2 years old, he'd caught a strange high fever on a family vacation in the Maldives. Within weeks, sound disappeared from his world like the tide pulling out for good. And despite being the son of Lucas Grant, tech mogul, billionaire, and supposed genius, no cure had ever come. Lucas had tried everything: cochlear implants, neural reconnection therapy, experimental nanotech, even an illegal procedure in Switzerland. Millions spent. Experts flown in. Nothing worked. Now, Oliver was a shadow that moved quietly behind a man too busy to notice silence. Across the courtyard, Lucas stormed past the fountain, his phone glued to his ear, barking at someone about quarterly reports and IPO timelines. He didn't see his son. Not really. He never did. Tell legal if they don't close that deal by Friday. I'll pull the funding myself, Lucas snapped. I don't care if the FDA needs another signature, get it done. He strode past Oliver without so much as a glance. The boy didn't turn his head. He couldn't hear the voice that used to sing him lullabies before the silence came. And then something strange happened. From the far end of the courtyard, a barefoot girl stepped into the marble square. She looked no older than 15. Skin smudged with city dust, hair in a wild braid down her back. A tray of wilted flowers and hand-carved wooden trinkets balanced in her thin arms. She wore no shoes. Her dress looked handmade from scraps and curtain fabric. Security usually chased people like her away before they got within 10 feet of the building. But somehow, no one noticed her today. Maybe it was luck. Maybe it was fate. Or maybe fate had finally decided to scream loud enough for the deaf to hear. Her eyes locked onto Oliver, not on his name, not on the fancy logo on his shirt, not on the bank account he represented. She looked directly at the boy, and then she whispered something, not to him, but to herself. I swear I can make you hear. Her voice trembled like the fountain's ripples behind her. She stepped closer, carefully, as if approaching a frightened animal. Oliver didn't move. His eyes tracked her like the moon tracks the tide, cautious, curious, unsure if this was another moment he would be forgotten in. The girl stopped in front of him, set the tray down, and slowly, gently raised her hands. She signed one word. Hello. Oliver blinked. Then, something astonishing happened. His expression changed. For the first time in years, someone was speaking his language. Not with sound, but with presence, with intention, with empathy. The girl smiled, the kind of smile that could only come from someone who had learned pain the hard way. She didn't wait for him to respond. She just sat beside him, cross-legged on the warm marble, close but not too close. Oliver signed something hesitant, almost shy. My ear itches. The girl leaned in, squinting. Hold still, she whispered. Her voice, useless to him, was meant more for herself. She moved closer, slowly raising her hand. In the distance, a security guard glanced up from his booth, but then looked away again. Nothing to worry about, just a weird kid. The billionaire's son was safe. Leia, though no one knew her name yet, gently placed a hand near Oliver's cheek. He didn't pull away. She reached into his ear. Carefully, tenderly, almost reverently. Then her fingers stopped, her eyes narrowed, and she pulled. What came out wasn't wax or a seed or something you could explain in medical terms. It was black. It was alive. and it writhed in the light like a thing born of nightmare and neglect, like a parasite that had made its home in silence. Oliver flinched. His mouth opened, and then, without warning, a car horn blared in the distance. Oliver screamed. A short, sharp cry of pure shock. His hands flew to his ears. He had heard it. The fountain, the wind, his own voice. "Aheshashech," he shouted, panicked and amazed. Lucas Grant turned mid-call, his eyes locked on his son. The phone dropped from his hand and cracked on the marble. "Oliver?" The boy turned. "Dad," he gasped, the word trembling, broken, but real. Time stopped. The air felt thick with disbelief. The security guard stood frozen. Employees stared from the office windows above. And at the center of it all, a boy who had known only silence for 8 years now sat clutching his ears, laughing and crying all at once. And next to him, barefoot and trembling, sat the girl who had made the impossible happen. Lucas took one step forward, and everything inside him shattered. Lucas Grant moved like a storm. His custom loafers echoed hard against the marble as he lunged toward his son, heart pounding with 1,000 conflicting signals: awe, disbelief, and something darker. "Get away from him!" he shouted, yanking Oliver's arm and pulling him behind him. Leia stumbled back, her hands raised instinctively. The tray of flowers clattered to the ground, carvings scattering across the stone like broken prayers. Security guards came running, their radios buzzing, their faces pale with confusion. "Sir?" one asked. "What's going on?" "Is he hurt?" Lucas didn't answer. He was staring at Leia like she'd just performed witchcraft in the middle of his empire. "What did you do to him?" he barked. "What the hell did you put in his ear?" Leia shook her head. Nothing. I pulled it out. It was moving. It was alive." Lucas's face twisted. "You're not a doctor. You're not even supposed to be here." Oliver, behind him, tugged his father's sleeve. "Don't hurt her," he said aloud. The words were gravel in his throat, wobbly and unsure. But they were words, out loud, heard. Lucas froze. The sound of his son's voice, real, raw, fragile, hit him harder than any slap. The last time he'd heard Oliver speak, the boy was 2 years old, saying "banana" through a mouthful of baby teeth. Now the voice was older, uncertain, like a song half remembered. And it was enough to bring the entire courtyard to a stunned silence. Even the fountain seemed to hold its breath. Lucas turned, staring at his son. You can hear me?" Oliver nodded. Tears welled up in Lucas's eyes, unbidden. His whole body trembled. "Say it again," he whispered. "Please." Oliver opened his mouth. "Dad." Lucas dropped to his knees. That single word spoken by the boy he thought he'd lost cracked something open in him he hadn't even known was still closed. He wrapped Oliver in his arms, crushed him to his chest like trying to memorize the shape of his breath. Leia watched, her own hands shaking. This wasn't the moment for her. This was theirs, but it still hurt. Security lingered awkwardly until Lucas, still on his knees, waved them off. "It's fine," he said hoarsely. "Stand down. Don't touch her." The men nodded, confused but compliant, and stepped away. Lucas turned to Leia again, his eyes softer now, but still full of questions. "What was it?" he asked. "What did you pull out?" Leia crouched, picked up a fallen carving shaped like a tiny ear, and held it in her palm for a second. "I don't know," she said. "But it wasn't right. It wasn't supposed to be in him." Lucas nodded, still staring at her like she was a riddle he wasn't equipped to solve. Then, without another word, he stood, scooped Oliver into his arms, and walked briskly toward the building. "Come with us," he said over his shoulder. Leia hesitated. "Please," he added. She followed. The hospital. 2 hours later, machines beeped. Monitors blinked. Doctors in white coats buzzed around Oliver like bees to honey poking, scanning, taking blood, running tests. Lucas stood behind the glass wall of the observation room, watching every movement with military focus. Leia sat on a chair nearby, hugging her knees to her chest. "He's okay," she said. "You don't have to look like you're about to pass out." Lucas didn't answer. He just kept staring at his son, like he was afraid Oliver might disappear if he blinked too long. A doctor in his 50s stepped into the hallway, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Grant," he said, voice smooth and corporate. "It's extraordinary." The obstruction she removed was lodged deep inside the auditory canal. It was foreign, organic, possibly parasitic. Lucas's nostrils flared. "You're telling me a barefoot teenager just did what your entire department couldn't in 8 years?" The doctor adjusted his glasses. "With all due respect, our specialists followed protocol. We ran every standard test. We had no reason to suspect." "You never even looked inside his ear," Lucas snapped. The doctor blinked. Leia stood. "They didn't look," she said quietly. "Because they didn't care." Lucas turned toward her, caught off guard by the steel in her voice. "They saw your name, your bank account. They assumed it was neurological, complex. So they made it complex. Because complex is expensive." The doctor cleared his throat and pulled a folder from under his arm. "You should see this." He handed it over. Lucas opened it, pages and pages of medical reports, stamped with official signatures. Then he saw it. "Maintain diagnosis to preserve long-term funding. Grant account approved." He read it twice, then a third time. The words didn't change. They had kept his son sick, deliberately, because his money kept flowing. Lucas's hands trembled. "You monsters," he whispered. "You sold my son's silence." He tore the pages in half. And the sound of that paper ripping echoed like a scream down the hospital hall. The hospital room dimmed into evening. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead while the world outside turned to rain. Inside, the atmosphere had shifted, still thick with disbelief, but now tangled with something else: guilt, confusion, and a growing reverence for the barefoot girl who had done the impossible. Leia sat in the corner of the room, her arms wrapped around her knees, chin resting on a hospital blanket. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Lucas stood by the window, staring out at the cars passing below. He hadn't said a word since tearing up the report. His thoughts were ricocheting like bullets in a glass room. Oliver lay on the bed, hooked to a monitor that beeped softly in time with his heartbeat. He wasn't asleep. His eyes were wide, scanning everything: lights, machines, his father's silhouette. He was hearing the world again, and it was terrifying. A nurse passed by the hallway, heels clicking on the floor. Oliver flinched. He pressed his hands to his ears. "Too loud," he whispered. Lucas turned quickly, stepping toward him. "I can turn them off," he said. "I'll get them to shut everything down, whatever you need." Leia's voice interrupted gently. "It's not the sound," she said. "It's the flood." Lucas turned to her, confused. He's not just hearing noise. He's hearing everything he missed all at once. The world didn't pause for him. Now it's crashing back in. Lucas nodded slowly, unsure how to process that. A long silence followed. Then he asked the question he'd been holding onto since the courtyard. "How did you know? What made you even look?" Leia lifted her head. Her eyes didn't waver. "Because I saw it before. In my brother." Lucas's eyebrows lifted, surprised. She exhaled, voice thin as paper. "His name was Marlowe. He was 7 when he got sick. Same thing: fever, dizziness, then silence. We didn't have insurance. The clinic turned us away because we owed them $43 from the last visit. 43. She laughed once, but it was bitter. I tried to fix it myself. I was 13. I thought maybe I could find something. We lived near a scrapyard, so I made this weird little hearing aid from copper wire and melted plastic." She paused, blinking back tears. "Didn't work. He got worse. Started scratching at his ears. Couldn't sleep. Then one night, he stopped breathing." Lucas stared at her, stunned. "I'm sorry," he said softly. I'm not telling you for pity, Leia replied. I'm telling you because when I saw your son, I recognized the look. That flicker behind the silence. Like the body's trying to fight what the world won't even admit is there. She looked straight at Lucas now. I knew something was inside him. Because I missed it before. I wasn't going to miss it again. Lucas swallowed hard. He sat slowly in the chair beside Oliver's bed. He could have died, he said. If you hadn't been there, he could have died a long time ago, she cut in. If he wasn't rich, Lucas didn't argue. He couldn't. The truth hung between them, heavy and sharp. Oliver stirred slightly. His eyes drifted toward Leia, who smiled and signed gently, "How are you?" He signed back, scared. "That's okay," she whispered aloud. "It means you're alive." Lucas watched the exchange, feeling both grateful and ashamed. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said after a moment. "All those doctors, all that tech. I thought, if I just spent enough." Leia didn't answer right away. Finally, she said, "Money helps. But it can't replace presence." Lucas rubbed his face. He suddenly looked older than his 42 years. "I didn't know how to be his dad after the silence came," he admitted. "So I threw money at the gap. That's what rich people do when they're scared," Leia said, not unkindly. They sat in silence again, the only sound the soft broken murmur of Oliver humming to himself, a melody with no rhythm, just curiosity. It was the most beautiful thing Lucas had ever heard. "What do I do now?" he asked her. Leia tilted her head. "You listen," Lucas chuckled bitterly. "I'm not great at that." "You weren't," she corrected. "But maybe you're starting to be." Then she stood, walked over to Oliver, and reached into her small cloth bag. She pulled out a wooden carving of a bird, small and smooth, wings tucked in mid-flight. She handed it to him. "This is for you," she signed. "It's how I think sound must feel." Oliver turned it over in his hands, eyes wide. Lucas watched, stunned at how his son looked at this girl, like she was the only person in the world. "I don't even know your name," he said quietly. "Leia," he nodded. "You saved my son, Leia." "No," she said. "I saw your son. He saved himself." The hospital was quiet that night, except for the faint hum of machines and the occasional squeak of shoes on polished floors. Oliver had finally fallen asleep, curled up like a child much younger than 10, the carved bird from Leia resting in his hands. Lucas sat by the window with his laptop open on his knees. His face was pale, the glow from the screen casting sharp shadows across the lines of his jaw. Leia had gone to get some rest, curled up on a bench down the hall. But Lucas couldn't sleep, not after what he'd seen. He hadn't intended to dig this deep. At first, it was just about understanding, getting clarity on how Oliver's condition had been mishandled. But now he was uncovering something much darker. He leaned closer, scrolling through an internal memo thread buried in a folder labeled Grant R&D, Auditory Recovery Program, Phase Out Docs. The emails were from nearly 7 years ago when Lucas had first hired a private biotech team to work alongside the hospital. One subject line froze him. Long-term silence maintenance and donor reliability, he clicked. Inside was a message from the lead tech developer. To sustain trial funding, patient must remain a qualifying subject. Complete auditory recovery would render the case ineligible. Advise maintaining partial failure to extend data collection. Recommend delaying full scan for protocol purposes. There were attachments, signed approvals, including his own digital signature on the funding release. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He felt sick. He clicked another folder, this one tied to the neural feedback devices they had implanted in Oliver when he was 6. They were supposed to help translate brain signals into synthetic sound. But now he saw notes in the margins. Minor interference triggers in auditory canal not addressed. Risk negligible. Fixing issue could compromise grant reporting window. Lucas slammed the laptop shut. The air around him felt heavy, poisonous. He'd been funding it. He'd paid people to keep his son deaf. Not on purpose, but not by accident either. And none of them ever looked into his ear. Because if they had simply dared to get close to really see Oliver, everything would have been different. His mind raced through all the conference calls, the quarterly meetings, the long tech decks full of jargon and confidence. He thought he was paying for progress. He was paying for performance. He had turned his son into a lab subject, an investment. He buried his face in his hands. That's when he heard the softest voice from the doorway. "So you saw it too, Leia." She stepped into the room, barefoot, eyes shadowed but steady. "How long have you known?" He asked hoarsely. "Since that day in the courtyard," she said. "When you looked at him, like you were looking through him. That's how they looked at Marlowe, my brother. Like he wasn't real. Just numbers and noise." Lucas shook his head. "I didn't know." "I swear. I believe you," she said. "But not knowing doesn't make the damage smaller." He nodded. He knew that. "I'm going to fix this," he said. "I don't care what it costs." Leia sat across from him, folding her legs under herself. "You're still thinking like a rich man," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "Always thinking the solution is money. That if you pay enough, the world will right itself. But this?" She gestured toward the closed laptop. "This isn't about money. It's about power and truth." Lucas leaned forward. "Then help me. Show me how." Leia studied him. Her voice softened. "You really want to help?" "Yes." She reached out and opened the laptop again. "Then we tell the truth. All of it." The next day, Grant Industries Lucas returned to his skyscraper like a man walking into a war zone. On the outside, nothing had changed: glass doors, polished floors, perfectly timed elevators. But inside, everything was different. He sat alone in the boardroom with a flash drive in his palm and a folder marked "Evidence Internal Ethics Breach." He called his assistant. "Pull all data from Project ORCA and redirect to a private encrypted cloud. Then delete the local versions." "Sir?" she asked, startled. "That's proprietary. Do it," he snapped. "Then call our legal team. I want to meet with compliance and PR. Today." As she left, Lucas whispered under his breath, "No more silence." The first leak 2 days later, an anonymous file dropped out an underground medical forum. Major biotech firm suppresses child's recovery to extend grant profits. Internal documents enclosed. It included redacted emails, scanned contracts, meeting transcripts, some with Lucas's name at the top. His own voice authorizing silence under the guise of research. The media pounced. By day 3, the story broke across all networks. The billionaire's son who was never meant to hear again. By day 4, Lucas was summoned to testify before a congressional ethics committee. And through it all, Oliver, now able to hear, but still afraid of the world, clung to Leia like she was the only thing real. Lucas watched his son, wondering how a barefoot stranger had done more in one day than he had done in 10 years. And what haunted him most wasn't her skill or her bravery. It was that she had listened, really listened. The Grant estate stretched across a hillside like a monument to control. Every line was sharp, every surface polished, every corner calculated. It was a house built not for living, but for impressing. And now that Oliver could hear, it was almost unbearable. The boy moved through the halls like a ghost, touching the walls, listening to the sounds that had always been there. The echo of his steps, the hum of electricity, the creak of the old oak near the balcony. But to him, it was all new, raw, loud, sometimes too loud. A door slamming in the distance made him flinch. He covered his ears, crouched down behind a chair, eyes wide like prey. It wasn't fear of danger, it was fear of noise. The world was suddenly unmuted, and it was more violent than he'd ever imagined. Only when Leia appeared did the panic subside. She moved differently from everyone else in the house. She didn't walk fast. She didn't speak loudly. She didn't carry tablets or wear designer shoes. And more than anything, she never tried to explain his experience to him. She just sat beside him in the garden and whittled shapes from soft wood. She signed when she spoke to him. And she always waited for him to respond, never rushing his fingers or his voice. Lucas watched them from a distance one afternoon, hidden behind a column like a man spying on strangers. Oliver laughed at something Leia signed. The sound was strange, awkward, shaky, but it was laughter, real. His son, laughing. It struck Lucas harder than any therapy session ever had. He stepped out into the sun, trying to join them. "Hey bud," he said. "Want to check out the new VR room? I had it reconfigured. It's all sound-based now, interactive. I thought it could help." Oliver looked up from his carving, but didn't speak. He turned back to his block of wood and kept working. "I'm okay," he said after a moment, not unkindly. Lucas froze. His son had just turned down an offer, and not because he was being rude, because he simply didn't want what was being offered. It felt like rejection, even though it wasn't meant to be. Leia glanced at him, not smug, not gloating, just observant. "You can't buy your way into his heart," she said. Lucas sighed, keeping his smile on even as it cracked at the edges. "I'm not trying to buy him. I'm trying to connect. Then stop thinking in devices and solutions," she replied. "Start thinking in moments." That night, Lucas found her by the window, sketching on a pad with a dull pencil. He stood awkwardly nearby, hands in his pockets. "I want to make you an offer," he said. She didn't look up. "I want to pay for your education, housing, a car. Whatever you want. You saved my son. I want to change your life." Still silent. "I know you've had it hard. What happened with your brother? It shouldn't have happened. Let me help." Finally, she met his gaze. "Are you offering because it's right?" she asked. "Or because you feel guilty?" He hesitated. "Both, I guess. I don't need your guilt," she said. "I don't need your money. I need you to show up for your son. Not with gifts. With you." Lucas dropped onto the couch beside her. "Exhale, no. I don't know how." "Then learn," she said. Like he's learning, like I did. He didn't argue. He couldn't. Later that night, he sat by Oliver's bed while the boy slept. The carved bird rested in the boy's small hands, worn smooth from being held so tightly. Lucas leaned close, whispering, "I don't know if I'm doing this right." No answer. So he tried something Leia had shown him, a few shaky signs. "I'm trying." Oliver's eyes opened. "I know," he said softly. Lucas smiled, eyes stinging. "You scared me," Oliver added. "You looked angry." That day, Lucas looked down, ashamed. "I was scared too," he said. "I thought I lost you. I thought I didn't deserve you." Oliver was quiet for a while. Then he asked, "Can I stay with her?" The question landed like a punch to the heart. Lucas blinked. "What?" "Not forever," Oliver said. "Just for now. It's quiet with her." "Even when it's loud." Lucas nodded slowly. He didn't trust his voice to hold steady. "Okay," he said at last. The next morning, Leia packed a small bag. A few clothes, some books, Oliver's sketchpad, the bird carving, of course. Lucas helped her. He didn't say much. Just folded shirts and tucked in a toothbrush, watching the moments slip through his fingers. When the car arrived, a regular SUV, not the company fleet, Oliver hugged his father tightly. "I love you," Lucas whispered. "I know," Oliver replied. Then he climbed into the back seat with Leia and closed the door. Lucas stood on the driveway as they pulled away. No guards. No tech, no plans. Just his son, leaving with the only person who had truly heard him. He stood there for a long time, long after the car was gone, listening to the silence, and realizing for the first time in his life just how much it could say. Lucas didn't sleep that night. He wandered through the echoing rooms of his house like a man displaced in his own kingdom. Every surface gleamed. Every corner was perfect. But none of it meant anything now. The silence, once his preferred companion, now pressed in like a verdict. Not peaceful condemning. He sat in his study, the room he once used to broker deals worth billions, now reduced to a makeshift war room. His laptop was open again. This time not for research or company reports, but to document everything, every file, every internal memo, every contract that showed how long the lie had lived. Leia had been right. It wasn't just about one child or one diagnosis. It was a pattern, intentional, systemic. The documents he had authorized had created incentives to maintain symptoms, not cure them. Patients like Oliver, high profile, high value, were never supposed to recover. Their ongoing treatment justified grants, device upgrades, partnerships with medical labs. The sicker they stayed, the more the machine profited, and Lucas had been the engine. At dawn, he sent everything to his legal team. He blind copied a small group of investigative journalists. He made a secure upload to an encrypted site he'd never used before, but had always known existed. Then, he walked into Grant Industries like a man heading into battle. His staff greeted him with smiles and rushed updates, unaware of the storm he was about to unleash. He walked into the boardroom where the monthly executive meeting was already in progress. They all turned to him, sensing something was off. "I'm shutting down Project Orca," he said. No preamble. No slides. Just the words, silence. "Excuse me?" One of the board members asked. "You're shutting down our most valuable R&D division?" "I'm also terminating our contracts with the partner hospitals," Lucas continued. "Effective immediately. A formal investigation into unethical diagnostic retention will begin today." Whispers rippled through the room. "You can't do that," another executive said, voice sharp. "That division accounts for." "I can." "And I just did," Lucas said. The head of legal leaned forward. "Lucas, with respect, you're opening yourself up to a storm of litigation, shareholder suits, government fines, even criminal charges. You're implicating yourself." "I know," Lucas replied. They stared at him, stunned. "But I'd rather be guilty and honest than clean and complicit." He turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. "If any of you want to stay and fix this with me, I'll protect you. If not, walk away. But understand this, every dollar we made off a child's suffering is going to come to light. Starting today." That night, Lucas wasn't a CEO anymore. He was a whistleblower. The media frenzy was immediate. News outlets picked up the leaked files. Talk shows argued over his motives. Was it redemption or desperation? Commentators dissected every word of his internal memos. Some painted him as a villain turned hero. Others weren't so kind. But Lucas didn't care. He didn't do interviews. He didn't respond to calls. He didn't issue statements. He just kept digging. And in the quiet hours, when the headlines faded and his phone finally stopped ringing, he thought of Oliver, the sound of his voice, the way he'd looked at Leia, the calm in him that hadn't come from money, but from presence, from being seen. Leia, meanwhile, had moved into a quiet duplex on the east side of the city. A friend of hers from a shelter had given her the space rent-free. She and Oliver created a new rhythm together. Mornings filled with quiet breakfast rituals, afternoons with sketching and long walks through noisy parks, where every sound startled and delighted the boy in equal measure. She never treated him like a patient. She treated him like a person. When Lucas visited, it was cautiously, respectfully. Sometimes he just sat on the porch while Oliver told him stories about bugs and shadows and things he thought sound might look like. Sometimes he helped them paint the kitchen. He was learning how to be there without taking over. One afternoon, Leia caught him lingering after Oliver had gone to bed. She handed him a cup of tea. "You're burning yourself out," she said. "I see it in your face." Lucas stared into the mug. "I thought if I just fixed everything fast enough, maybe I could undo what I let happen." "You can't undo it," she said. "But you can own it." He looked at her. "I'm trying," she nodded. Then you're already doing more than most. There was a pause. Do you hate me? He asked. For being one of them? For funding all of it? She shook her head. No, I hate the system that turned you into someone who thought money could replace love. Lucas swallowed hard. I think, he said slowly, I'm finally learning how to listen. She smiled faintly. You're late, she said. But not too late. Outside, a breeze stirred the trees. A dog barked in the distance. Sirens passed, distant but distinct. The world was alive with sound. Lucas closed his eyes, listening. Not as a mogul, not as a man of influence, but as a father learning to hear for the very first time. Lucas stood in the mirror of the guest bathroom at Leah's duplex, hands braced against the sink. He looked tired. Not in the way money could fix, this was something deeper. The exhaustion of a man who had finally stopped running from the truth. In the weeks since the leak, everything had changed. Several top executives had resigned. 2 partner hospitals had launched internal reviews. A government ethics inquiry was now underway. Lucas had become a central witness. Every headline called it a reckoning. Some still tried to protect him. Others called for his arrest. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was the boy sleeping in the next room. Oliver's recovery was slow and messy. Every new sound was a challenge. Some frightened him, others fascinated him. A leaf blower made him sob. Rain tapping the windows made him laugh. His speech was coming in fragments, stitched together by memory and effort. Sometimes it took minutes to form a sentence. Sometimes he reverted to signing when the noise got too much. But Lucas didn't mind. He was learning to listen in both languages. That morning, Lucas had tried to make breakfast. Eggs, toast, a mess. Oliver giggled at his burnt attempt, which only made Lucas beam. Better than the chef at home, Oliver had said proudly, the words shaky but clear. Lucas felt the weight of that sentence for hours afterward. Not because of the compliment, but because of the word, home. This place Leia's small apartment. With chipped mugs and too many books stacked on the floor, this was where his son had found peace. Not the mansion, not the empire, but here, where love filled the space money never could. One afternoon, Lucas found Oliver in the backyard, sitting in a patch of dirt, drawing shapes with a stick. He sat beside him, folding his long legs carefully, still not used to the rhythm of quiet moments. Oliver glanced at him and signed, I want to make a school. Lucas blinked. A school? For kids like me, Oliver said. Ones who can't hear. Or don't know how. Ones no one listens to. Lucas smiled. You want to build something? Oliver nodded. But not big, just real. Lucas felt something crack open in his chest. Then that's what we'll do, he said. In the coming days, plans began to form, not corporate. Not grand, just simple outlines. A few names of teachers Leia knew from shelters and community centers. A church willing to lend space on weekends. A retired therapist who offered time for free. Lucas didn't lead the project. He followed. He listened. He learned. Leia was cautious at first. She didn't want the project to become another brand. Another logo slapped on a website. So Lucas gave her full control. He handed her the reins. And when he sat in the back of the room during their first informal gathering, 7 kids, 3 volunteers, and a single folding table, he didn't speak once. He just watched Oliver sign with a younger girl who had never used her voice. He watched Leia teach a boy how to listen with his eyes. He watched lives starting to open up, not because of innovation, but because of attention. Later that evening, Lucas found himself alone in the kitchen, washing mugs. Leia came in quietly, drying her hands on a towel. You stayed quiet today, she said. I had nothing to add, Lucas replied. She leaned against the counter beside him. You know what I think? She said. What? You were never deaf, she said softly. You were just terrified of hearing something you couldn't control. He looked at her. You think I'm still afraid? She shrugged. A little, but less than before. Lucas turned off the water. I used to think power was control, he said. Now I think it's something else. What? Presence, he answered. Being with someone, without trying to change them. Just being there, she nodded. That's what listening really is, she said. They stood in silence for a moment. The quiet between them didn't feel empty, it felt full. I don't know what's going to happen next, Lucas said. With the investigation, with the company, with all of it. You'll lose things, she said. Important things. But maybe not the ones that matter. He nodded slowly. Thank you, he said. For what? For not walking away. Leia tilted her head. I almost did, she admitted. After Marlowe, after everything. I thought the world had nothing left for people like me. But Oliver, he reminded me how to stay. Lucas looked down. I wish I'd been the one to do that for him. You are now, she said. The two of them stood there, surrounded by chipped mugs and soft light. And for once, neither had anything left to prove. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, microphones aimed like weapons, cameras flashing under gray skies. Lucas Grant stood at the top, hand resting on a stack of legal files, his suit plain, his tie missing. He didn't need a brand anymore. He wasn't here to protect his image. He was here to tell the truth. Inside under oath, Lucas gave his testimony. He explained how the system worked, how profit was disguised as protocol, how silence was maintained not by accident, but design. He admitted his part in it, every signature, every oversight, every decision made behind a desk that led to children being denied care. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't expect applause. When it was over, he walked outside into the cold, silent morning, where Leia and Oliver waited on the sidewalk. Oliver ran up and hugged him tightly, his small arms fierce with emotion. Lucas knelt to meet him. I did it, he whispered. It's all coming out now, Oliver smiled, proud and steady. Good. Leia said nothing, but her eyes held approval, the kind of wordless affirmation that didn't need to be spoken. Lucas knew he still had work to do. Redemption wasn't a switch, it was a road. But for the first time, he felt his feet firmly on it. Later that week, the story broke in full. A multi-billion-dollar cover-up dismantled, whistleblower protections enacted, and a coalition forming to create new standards for pediatric care in tech-assisted medicine. Lucas declined every interview. He was done speaking to the world. He was listening now. Back at the small learning space Leia and Oliver had helped build, more children were arriving. Some with hearing aids, some who had never spoken. Some who had been overlooked, misdiagnosed, or dismissed by systems that didn't see their worth. Lucas donated funds quietly, anonymously. The place grew not in size, but in warmth, in safety, in meaning. He didn't lead. He swept floors, he painted murals. He fixed broken chairs. He learned to sign fluently, not from an app, but from Oliver. He was there every weekend. One day, Oliver stood in front of a group of kids and told his story. My dad used to try to fix me, he said. Now he just loves me. Lucas felt his chest tighten with emotion. Afterward, as they walked home, he asked Leia, how do I thank you for what you gave me? For giving me back my son? Leia paused, looking out across the street as wind blew through the leaves. You don't owe me anything, Mr. Grant, she said softly. Just promise me you'll keep listening. To him, to people no one else hears. Lucas nodded slowly. I will, I promise. The three of them reached the front porch, and as Oliver ran ahead to chase a butterfly, Lucas and Leia lingered at the steps. You know, he said, all these years, I thought hearing was about sound, about fixing the broken parts. But it's not. She raised an eyebrow. He looked out at his son, real listening. Starts here, he said, placing a hand over his heart. She smiled. Sometimes the richest people are the ones who finally learn how to hear, not with their ears, but with their souls. The sun rose higher in the sky, warm and unhurried. And for the first time in his life, Lucas Grant no longer needed silence to feel peace. He just needed to be present, to love, to listen. The end.